Good afternoon, everyone. It's Governor Lujan Grisham. I am joined today by Diego Arancon. I'm going to guess that for most New Mexicans and our viewers, you may not be as familiar with Mr. Arancon, and I want to tell you why he's with me today. He is the lead person on all of these emergencies, but particularly fires, through the Department of Homeland Security and then every other government resource, because this is his background. He is the Deputy Chief Operating Officer in my office. Oh no, you're the Deputy Chief of Staff.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, there you are. They're very similar because we frankly just leverage each other's work. He is a trained firefighter, a trained first responder, a trained paramedic or emergency medical technician. He knows exactly how these small and very large complex emergencies work. More importantly, given his office role inside the office of the governor, he knows how to marshal resources. Like we do for most of these technical briefings, I also have technical experts who are really responsible for dealing with the forest issues, which is all of these fires. You've been introduced to the State Forestry Director, Laura McCarthy. She's here in the room to answer questions. And also we have our Acting Adjutant General, General Aguilar from the National Guard, who has been very present, particularly in the CAF and Hermit Peak fire. Approximately a week ago, I provided this kind of a broad update from the Emergency Operations Center. And we talked about 16 counties in New Mexico who were dealing with 20 to 21 fires at the time. Every fire, particularly this early in fire season, is an emergency reaction situation, right? All personnel on the ground, everyone figuring out ways to make sure that we're managing and mitigating, save lives. Today, I want folks to know that we have 5 active fires in 6 New Mexico counties. Now, while for us this is productive news because it means that we can continue to really focus our efforts on the highest risk, most complex fires, those are in the north, clearly. But the other 2 fires, one in Socorro, one in Catron County, the Bear Trap and Turkey fires, they are high-risk fires in the context of their potential. So I don't want to minimize, and again, it's barely May, that there's a lot of fire activity occurring in the state of New Mexico that's requiring statewide attention, and they will continue to get appropriate statewide attention. I think most New Mexicans are seeing such horrific images from the Calf and Hermit Peak fire that we want to talk mostly about what's going on in northern New Mexico. So as of this morning, the Calf Canyon and Hermit Peak, these are 2 fires that have basically grown together. That's how we refer to it, as a complex fire for folks who are just, this is the first briefing that you are attending. We have 138,912 acres that are part of this fire. It is only 20% contained. Over 6,000 homes are evacuated. We believe that we have 166 homes that have been destroyed. I want to clarify and define that in 1 minute. And we're still in the process of confirming. There's a very specific federal requirement about how we do that. The clarification is this: there may be individuals who know unequivocally through either a sheriff's report or a state police officer's mention or a family nearby that they've lost their home and it's not included in our number. It will get included when we can make those assessments. We don't want folks trying to do these assessments themselves, and it's not inclusive of other structures, livelihoods, livestock, and any number of other losses that we know we will be identifying You cannot have 6,000 people evacuated, and you cannot have 140,000 acres burned through many communities in the north, through several counties, without having more damage, and we are clear. But this is what we know as confirmed. One house lost to one New Mexico family is too many. We are very grateful for the work of the firefighters and first responders. In all of these fires, we've only lost 2 New Mexicans. I'm incredibly proud of the individuals who are working diligently day and night to save lives while they put this fire out and continue to get their arms around what's going on in the north. The Cooks Peak fire is now at 59,076 acres. It is 72% contained. Good news, given that the weather, and remember, fires create their own weather or atmospheric conditions. Our enemy with this fire isn't just the fuel and the extremely dry conditions in the state and in our forests, but it is the wind. And when the wind is this dangerous and this unpredictable, and we've got gusts up to 70 miles per hour on many days, there is no way that you can actively pursue putting the fire out. It requires ground crews digging trenches and containment lines. It's not like putting out a house fire. You don't drive a fire truck and spray water. That doesn't mean that we aren't doing some of that mitigation efforts to key buildings and properties where we can, and it doesn't interfere with the core mission of getting our arms around the Calf Hermit Peaks fire. But this requires air support. These are areas that you can't hike to. Requires air support and the ground lines to contain the fire. There are more than 1,200 men and women actively working on this fire, including we continue to get additional federal teams, strike teams, tag teams. These are folks that are experts at these kinds of fires. They work with our local folks, and we're bringing in personnel from a variety of states and the federal government to continue to deal with this complex fire, and they are. We have 800 homes evacuated in Cooks Peak. We have no confirmed, remember that language, confirmed, structures lost. And the fire had minimal growth yesterday. 72% contained, all good news. Again, one burst of terrible wind or weather, and that could shift. These are all high-risk fires. I'm going to make that very clear. Every single one of the fires that we're working on today in the state of New Mexico all have high risk. The biggest risk is the complex Calf and Hermit's Peak. The Cerro Pelado fire, which is located on federal land just east of Jemez Springs, has burned 22,314 acres. A type 1, that's the most strategic, right, team for complex fires or difficult fires. An incident management team is managing this fire because it is also a complex fire, moving quickly in very difficult ground to manage with lots of communities and homes in its path. So that is getting the attention that it also needs. We have 200 homes evacuated, 3 homes confirmed loss, and we believe more losses are likely in this fire. Again, these are all tragic. We don't want anything lost, but this is why we evacuate you, because we are concerned that the fire will sweep through a community. This is why we ask folks to leave. The fire grew by 4,429 acres as of yesterday. A couple more updates, our announcement for the day, and we'll take questions. With 6,000 people evacuated and affected in northern New Mexico, principally San Miguel, Mora, Colfax counties, but not limited to those counties. We have people primarily living with friends and relatives, sheltering in Vegas where it's still safe, in Taos, in Penasco, and I think people are in Santa Fe, Albuquerque, and any number of other communities where they have family. I want to thank those families for stepping up and making room and arrangements for their loved ones. Others are still being sheltered at shelters that are stood up in Las Vegas, in Taos, in Penasco. In addition, we've got a number of people. We've got 500 people nearly who are sheltering at Glorieta. We have room for about another 100 plus 120 at Glorieta. And we've made arrangements for sheltering in Santa Rosa. And in particular, in Santa Rosa, they've got a very effective site for folks who might need additional privacy and health and medical support, like senior citizens or folks who are in assisted living, boarding care, or related type support services. So that is now available in Santa Rosa. More is being made available. We continue to identify locations and supports statewide to make sure that people have safe housing, access to food, and day-to-day supplies. Big shout out to every single New Mexican who's donated financially and who's directly delivering food, goods, and supplies to these communities through their churches, shelters, and any number of other organizations and entities. I am actually today not concerned about getting those supplies moving. It's happening routinely. The Guard delivers those, state police deliver those, state actors deliver those. We continue to take requests from emergency managers. That's how this works. County, sheriffs, they make the decisions, they have the training, they make the calls, we wrap around them and provide everything else. We are providing everything from cash vouchers through a private sector partner that's paid for by the state, that's helped New Mexico, to any number of other resources, including behavioral health counseling, and so it's crisis counseling and emergency, and to figuring out school and child care supports and operations everywhere folks are being sheltered, including delivering health care and prescriptions where we need them, and we're moving those, I think, fairly effectively. That's not to say to anyone watching that every single issue has been addressed in the way that we would like it to. We want it to be immediate. Sometimes it's harder to deliver. So, what is the most important thing we do? Save lives. Second most important thing we do is contain and put out these fires. Don't let any of these other high-risk fires get out of control. And lastly, which is why I'm actually incredibly proud of the work of the state of New Mexico and our local partners. If we didn't have the best local first responders, I can tell you that we would not be announcing we're the first state in the nation to do. There's more than $29 million in the north. $29 million expended to date, with $2 million additional every single day to put out these fires and to support this community. And more is coming. The state has more emergency dollars that it can direct, and it will. But the big one is getting a presidential disaster declaration. Now, this may seem like this is pro forma, and why wouldn't you have that when you have a federal government who certainly is partially to blame for the situation that we're in one of the, in fact, the biggest fire in the United States, the Calf Hermit's Peak fire. But it is not pro forma. And in fact, these disaster declarations at the federal level, which unlock nearly unlimited resources to make states and communities and individuals whole, do not occur until after the emergency is dealt with. And the reason is that they require a very sophisticated level of effort to identify what the losses are. Very specific, very narrow, very arduous, very time-consuming, related to well after the fire is put out. Well, I'm unwilling to wait. I have 6,000 people evacuated. I have families who don't know what the next day looks like. I have families who are trying to navigate their children, their healthcare resources, figure out their livelihoods, and they're in every single little community. And it must feel to them like they are out there on their own. Well, you're not. So we have been working feverishly, and we are going to be the very first state in the nation to have a presidential declaration accepted and signed by the president, unlocking all of these resources for watershed recovery, restoration of all of those wildlands, and personal, direct, financial reparation and assistance before the fire is out. And we are submitting this today. The president is very clear that that is coming, and we have every indication that we'll be the first state to be able to advance this request and unlock these resources for New Mexicans. And I'm incredibly proud of the work that's occurred to get this done. It has not been easy. And for folks who have felt like maybe we weren't as present, I'm really clear about what's going to have to happen the second we get this fire out. And we're going to protect the families in New Mexico. They're my first priority. And so I am signing this declaration request. All right, what's the date?
33rd.
Okay, I'm just making sure you guys are clear what day this is. We've been working on this fire for well over a month. These days are all blending together. The people who are fighting this fire are absolutely amazing. Our request for a presidential federal disaster declaration is hereby signed and complete, and New Mexicans should expect that declaration by the White House forthwith. All right. Do we have questions?
I have two quick questions, just statistically. Do you know how many people are remaining in their homes in evacuation go areas, and also how many people are without power?
I'm going to defer that question to the experts in the room, including Mr. Adenkon. I don't. I will tell you that the answer for me is too many. I want to take an opportunity, which is not part of your question, but it has come to us in the numerous meetings that we've been to on the ground, including myself, in primarily Las Vegas, but in the north, that there's a sense that when it's a mandatory evacuation, that we evict people from their homes. We do no such thing. But it does mean that we've made the decisions based on the local calls from local experts, the emergency managers in the county and the sheriffs, primarily, that it's no longer safe for us to be in, and it's no longer safe for you to be there. That means an ambulance can't get to you, that when power is either lost because of the winds or cut off because it's a fire hazard, that we're not in a position to provide support. It is a very damaging, emotional situation for those families who have loved ones who have not left, and for a governor and other local elected leaders who are worried about those families that we cannot adequately support because they have chosen to stay home. We talk about it every single day about what we can do, and it is very extremely limited. And in fact, I have no doubt that we have people without power who are on oxygen. I have no doubt we have individuals who are running out of food and water. And it is a terrible tragedy. And the second it's safe, we will go back in and assess and support those individuals, no matter their decision. But while it's unsafe, we are not in a position to do that. I will tell you this, that I know that we know how many, because we're making calls, particularly to seniors, through aging and long-term services, through state police, through other first responders, and we do that in coordination with the local sheriffs and undersheriffs in those communities. Primarily now, Mora County, we've been spending a lot of time with residents who did not evacuate out of Mora County. So we are making calls, and we urge them to leave safely if we can assist, if that's still safe, and we want to get a general sense of their conditions, but we don't have the ability to serve everyone in that environment, and that's why we ask you to leave. Diego, do you have a number?
I do not have a number. It's probably in the hundreds. It's a moving number. It changes daily because we have people that are messaged directly, neighbors, EMs, through us directly, National Guard. State police is a major presence out there, literally knocking on doors. We have some limitations when it comes to Power, as you know, cell towers that have been damaged. We're on the ground and encouraging people to move. We are very aware of it. As the governor mentioned, we are focused on aging population that have been contacted directly, if not by phone, in person. And that, I take this moment to stress how important it is to evacuate if you're in go status, listen to the professionals around you. There is significant issues for us getting back to you in the event of an emergency, such as a heart attack, a broken arm, usual 911 calls. It limits our ability, and we may not be able to get to you if you're in that area. So I take this opportunity to make that point. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, and I think you did a much better job than I did, Mr. Adenkon, which is we don't want to abandon anyone. You know, our job is to try to support to the highest degree every single New Mexican, no matter the decisions that they make. But there are situations where we may not be able to do that. And that concern weighs heavy, and I know that it's weighing very heavily on their families who are reaching out to us, asking us to do more. But we do have those limitations and those risks, and we want to be candid, we always would, but provide that candor about those risks. They're real.
Okay, it's only May, so it may get a lot worse. What are your thoughts about that, and what are we doing to prepare as the months go on and it gets a lot hotter and a lot drier?
I mean, that we're doing the things that we know are effective and evidence-based, right? We banned fires on public lands and fireworks. We are asking localities to do the same with fireworks. We're trying to mitigate risk. We want everyone to be incredibly cautious and careful, to recognize that the wind is not our friend, and certainly this extreme drought. Reality is, I'm not going to have the ability. No governor in the U.S. is going to be able to take all the fuel out of their extreme drought areas or high-risk areas. I'm not going to be able to control the weather or lightning or a downed power line, which is the cause of many of our these disasters, including even in the snowstorm that affected Cuesta and Chama in the north early in December. The best thing we can do is I need people to be extremely cautious. I need folks to be really clear about the risks. And I need folks to heed that we have a lot of work to do as a nation and for the entire West and Southwest. We need new rules about prescribed burns. We need new rules about how we get fuel out of the fire areas and wilderness areas. We need to think about ways to utilize the nation's National Guard and experts in forestry to think about other strategies to mitigate risk. This will be an opportunity with this declaration for recovery efforts. Remember, it's public assistance too. That means focusing on watersheds, watershed restoration, mitigating anything from monsoon seasons and flooding, picking up debris. I mean, really hitting that hard. That will also help us mitigate fire risk, no question. And it's also individual and family assistance. But those are the best things that we can do. And of course, it's a great time for me to plug that we are closing in, because we finally are getting the research required out of the New Mexico State and New Mexico Tech primarily, but we have some private sector companies that have been working for the last couple of years to help us with the 50-year water plan. So we're really clear about where we're using our water resources and what we can do to mitigate the damage from being in an extreme drought situation, because that's not going to get immediately better.
Is there enough shelters in Las Vegas for all the people affected, and will some of them be moved here to Santa Fe if possible?
I think that given the current situation with this fire at 20% containment, that we should expect that more people are going to have to move further away from their hometowns and communities, and it's really a hardship for them. Because when you're on the ground in your community and you're talking to your friends and your neighbors, your church is right there, you know, you have a sense of community. Everybody's working to support each other, and you get information in that sort of informal context that I think, while sometimes can be misinformation, and I worry about that, can also at the same time be incredibly comforting. But people are going to have to be moved further, which is why Santa Rosa, Santa Fe, we will make sure there's sufficient shelter, but I think that's a very important point to make. that over the next couple of weeks, I have no doubt that we're going to have to identify more areas, and we will continue to do that. And that's work that we're also doing daily, is identifying shelter space and support for families so that they get daycare, schools, medical attention, behavioral health, food, clothing, supplies, all of those services. We work to embed them in every single shelter.
Can you comment on the role
Sorry,
that
Rob.
oh, go ahead.
No, go, please.
Can you comment on the role now that National Guardsmen are playing? How many are in northern New Mexico? What their day-to-day is looking like? Are they on fire lines with fire crews?
I'm going to have the acting adjutant general do that, but I want to give a couple of pieces on the front end. There was a lot of confusion about the Guard. If I had 5,000 men and women in the Guard who were all firefighters, they would have been on this fire, and I have no doubt I wouldn't have had to ask. I would have gotten we can help, and we would have deployed them in that way to the fire. They are not all trained firefighters, and so that doesn't help fight the fire. The Guard operates, and they have for every single emergency, in a supportive role to the state, in addition to their national responsibility to protect and be in a role of protection and peace for those kinds of international missions. They're currently doing that as well. Here's when they first got to San Miguel County. Their job was to secure their own space so that we don't have emergencies with them, because I need them to be a resource function. So they secured their armory and got all of that loaded. They got buses, transportation, and drivers to make sure that hospitals, nursing homes, boarding cares, assisted livings, the Behavioral Health Institute, Meadows, that nursing home, and all high-risk individuals had direct and ready access to move out when they needed to be evacuated. And on Sunday at 7 p.m., things looked as good as they could in that moment. By 2 a.m. on Monday, we were actively doing those evacuations. Without the Guard, we would have insufficient personnel to have safely done that. So that was their first mission. 2, they absolutely are doing shelter work. I know that they've been involved in food delivery, water delivery, supplies delivery. They support the state police and the sheriff in maintaining and giving information if a road is closed to pass to people driving, so they know where to go, how to safely turn around. But they are not policing. They are not on the streets. There was a rumor that they're engaged in support to prevent looting. There are there's nothing that we see of any kind that would indicate that any of that is going on. Those are police responsibilities. The Guard is in a supportive role to support families in need and individuals in need, and to safely get them evacuated. Their primary and principal roles. They also can fly helicopters, and so in fact, if there's an emergency evacuation for an individual, then we have additional air ambulance type support out of these communities. And in a fire of this nature, you want to back up to make sure that if you have an emergency, what if I have a firefighter with a broken leg? Then we have additional rescue operations that can take place. That's what the Guard does. General?
Yeah, so today, 111 soldiers that are currently on state active duty. Am I good? So today, 111 active National Guardsmen are on state active duty doing all these missions. So the governor did a very good job of covering all the things that we're doing. At the end of the day, we have folks that are tied into the Department of Homeland Security Emergency Management. From the very beginning of the fires, there has been someone here coordinating. And so as local officials ask for resources and they come up to the state level, we vet them and figure out which are the ones that the Guards should be involved in. And then we start applying those resources to them. So we've delivered over 16,000 gallons of non-potable water in Buena Vista as of today. We've dropped about 100,000 gallons of water out of Bambi buckets from our helicopters in Cerro Pilado. We're doing evacuation operations. We've drove buses for evacuees in vans, which we're doing today. We're supporting some of the folks that were evacuated from the state hospital and the long-term care facility in Silver City and in TRC. And so at the end of the day, the Guard will be whatever the community needs us to be. in order to keep folks safe and protect property.
Thank you, John.
Robert, do you have a question?
Thank you. Yeah, 2 questions, please. You've twice mentioned, Governor, federal responsibility and prescribed burn. So I could ask the broad question, what's your thoughts on that? Clearly this was a prescribed burn that somehow went wrong. Does it mean the federal government needs to rethink it? Does it mean we should have more of a say in it? Then I have a more personal question, which is, in all the years you've been here, have you ever seen it like this? And quite frankly, does it scare you?
Let's do the latter one first. The climate crisis situation for New Mexicans is significant. I don't know that I would use scared. I'm tough. New Mexicans are tough. I'm a New Mexican. Frankly, I'm a Norteño, so say no more. But we have to be so much more aware of the risks that we have in this beautiful state of ours. We're seeing it play out every day. Nevada, Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, Montana, California, Washington, Oregon have all been on fire for years. Canada was on fire. We're going to have a whole new normal about these risks and about these fires. Last summer, I was expecting, but dreading, because I don't want anyone to be hurt, and I don't want anyone to lose their home. I can't even imagine the emotional toll it takes on a family to lose their home. And they happen all across America every day. Tornadoes, hurricanes, flooding, fires. And in fact, these changes in weather patterns, including these droughts that create these risks, are part of a climate crisis, which is why the work that we do in renewable energy and a transition and being incredibly aggressive about water and water conservation, looking for brackish water reserves, thinking how we do our ag differently, all of it is about protecting the state for future generations, for your children and grandchildren and mine. But that is not going to happen tomorrow. It is a process that we will have to all do together. And I don't want to mitigate how people are feeling about these fires in this moment. But in fact, New Mexico is leading the nation in dealing with these climate crisis issues by any standard. And we're going to keep doing that. And quite frankly, that's how we keep New Mexicans safe until we have a complete global transition away from the current climate crisis that's been created by all of us. These fires are dramatic in the context that they're so early. And Robert, last summer was such an anomaly. We were expecting, I mean, we were always in a state of readiness. And for the people watching and the families who were affected in the north, I have no doubt that there's been a gap, or one phone number didn't work, or an email or a website didn't get updated as quickly as it should. But the fact that we haven't lost anyone, except for the 2 individuals, was awful, in Lincoln County, speaks volumes about how well your local elected leaders and how our emergency responders are getting this done. That in and of itself is a huge victory, and one that I take great pride in the men and women who would do whatever it takes to protect another New Mexican. My focus is getting the fire out, not letting us lose a single New Mexican, and then holding the federal government accountable. And that was really the focus of your first question, which is this. This isn't our first situation where the federal government put us in real harm's way. Los Alamos is a very good example. And they provided through a congressional bill, so a congressional act specific to recovery for that fire. And I have no doubt that in addition to the declaration and early investments by the feds, we should expect what I'm calling reparation, restitution, direct investments by the feds. And then lastly, and I'm going too long and I apologize, I believe that will also then, because when you have a liability, you look for ways to minimize those liabilities. And I think that we will absolutely lean in, and I'm looking at some experts who will set some new notice requirements and some rules about prescribed burns. And I said it last time, we cannot get ahead of these fires without taking some of the fuel out of our forests and wilderness areas. Prescribed burning has to be part of that effort. Prescribed burning in April and during the windy season does not have to be in that equation. It has no business being in that equation. After the rains, in the winter, when it snowed, maybe you can't get such a productive burn with a lot of snow on the ground. We're going to have to figure it out. But this cannot occur again anywhere in the U.S. New Mexico's going to work diligently to make sure the feds have a whole new set of rules that keep us safer. That's for sure.
One more
Thank you,
question?
Governor.
I have one more, unrelated to wildfires, actually, if you can comment on the Supreme Court draft to overturn Roe v. Wade, just quickly, and what it could mean for New Mexico.
Well, what it means really for women all across the country is A, they have taken away a constitutional protection from women and their families. And if you look at the body of this released draft opinion, this has all kinds of, I think, horrific implications for access to things like contraceptives, fertility counseling, any number of patient privacy issues that I think government has no business being involved in for women or their families. It means that half the country, New Mexico included, will respect a woman's right to choose, and will have to fight for that. It becomes a political issue in a way that it's been for a long time, but much more heightened. And half the country will have the opposite situation. Lastly, the things that we have come to rely on that are constitutional interpretation about our liberties and freedoms, I would say to every American, are fair game apparently. Because a long-held legal principle is once you have a thing decided, that becomes the law. If we can just overturn 50 years of constitutional protections, what is next? I'm very disturbed about what's been released and identified as this draft opinion. I worry that this was purposely released for what purpose I cannot understand. And I'm going to fight just as hard to protect New Mexico women and women in the country as I am to put these fires out in every single community and to protect every family who has lost something because of this fire. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you guys. Appreciate everybody coming out. There's a lot going on.
Nora, Maddie, can we all get copies of the declaration request?
Yeah,
Yep.
we'll have
Yes.
stuff going out.
Okay.
You guys are awesome.